For centuries, a battle has been raging. Not in heaven, not in hell, but right on the pages of literary criticism. And the subject? Well, it's one of the most compelling, charismatic, and controversial figures ever written, John Milton's Satan from Paradise Lost. This is way more than just good versus evil. This is a full-blown debate about what it even means to be a hero, a rebel, and what art itself is all about. And this right here is the question that has split readers and scholars right down the middle. When you read Paradise Lost, what are you seeing? Is it a tragic hero, a noble rebel fighting for freedom, or is it a massive egotist, a kind of cosmic fool whose entire rebellion is, when you get down to it, just absurd? This single question has fueled one of the biggest, longest-running arguments in all of literature. I mean, listen to that. That's Satan's most famous line. And you can just feel the raw power in it. It's the ultimate statement of independence, right? It's pure defiance against absolute authority. And it's exactly this kind of magnetic, rebellious spirit that made so many people, for so long, fall completely in love with the character.
Okay, so let's start with the traditional view, the one that really dominated the conversation for more than 100 years. This is the idea, championed by none other than the Romantic poets, that Satan isn't actually the villain of Paradise Lost. He's the true hero.
Right, so you had the Romantics, poets like William Blake and Percy Bysshe Shelley. These were guys who were all about individualism and rebelling against authority, so of course they saw Satan as their guy. Blake famously said that Milton was secretly of the devil's party without knowing it. And Shelley, well, he took it even further. He argued that Satan was actually morally superior to Milton's God, who he saw as a sadistic tyrant. For Shelley, it didn't matter what wrongs Satan committed because the wrongs done to him were so huge they just exceed all measure. For a very long time, this was the heavyweight champion opinion. And then, everything changes. It's 1942, right in the thick of World War II, and C.S. Lewis basically walks into the ring and throws a knockout punch. He publishes his book, A Preface to Paradise Lost, and the entire debate gets flipped completely on its head. So what was Lewis's big move? His main argument was this: Milton's poetry about Satan is incredible, a work of genius, and we should absolutely admire it. But the character of Satan himself? No. Lewis said we should not admire him. He argued that if you actually look at Satan's motives, his logic, he's not grand or heroic at all. He's fundamentally ridiculous.
And he did not pull any punches. Lewis was incredibly blunt about it. He believed that anything that is truly, deeply detestable is also, when you really get down to it, ridiculous. For Lewis, Satan's evil wasn't just a moral problem, it was an intellectual one. It was just nonsense.
So what was Satan's big, noble cause anyway? According to Lewis, it was nothing more than a sense of injured merit. Basically, he got his feelings hurt. He thought himself impaired because God the Father elevated the Son. So this whole thing wasn't some grand fight for freedom, it was a fit of cosmic pique. As Lewis put it, you have this world of song and dance in heaven, and all Satan can think about is his own resume, his own prestige. He was literally revolting against the very source of his own existence and power. Now for Lewis, this idea of degradation is the absolute key to the whole poem. He argues that Satan doesn't stay this magnificent, epic figure. He shrinks. He starts out as the supposed hero, right? Then he's a general leading an army. Then he becomes a slimy politician down in hell. Then a secret agent spying on Eden. And it gets worse. From there, he becomes a peeping Tom, leering at Adam and Eve. And finally, he ends up as a snake. For Lewis, this isn't some tragic downfall. It's a progressive and, honestly, pretty pathetic degradation. Now, as you can probably imagine, the literary world did not just sit back and say, "Oh, okay, thanks, C.S. Lewis." No way. His argument was so provocative that the backlash was immediate, it was fierce, and it completely shaped this debate for decades to come. Oh yeah, the critics came at Lewis from all sides. A.J. Waldock basically said he was being too simplistic, that he was focused on what Milton wanted to do instead of what he actually put on the page. E.E. Stoll claimed Lewis was just deft poetry, applying cold common sense to this larger-than-life character. And then you had others, like Hamilton and Werblotsky, who argued that all of Lewis's mocking and clever insults were not only unfair, but they were actually getting in the way of seeing the character clearly. Okay, so the heart of the whole counterargument really boiled down to this one idea: degeneration versus degradation. It sounds similar, but it's a huge difference.
Lewis believed Satan degenerates from the inside out. His own evil choices corrupt him and make him smaller and more foolish. But Waldock argued the exact opposite. He said Satan doesn't fall apart on his own. He is degraded by Milton. Waldock's theory was that Milton created a character so awesome and powerful that he actually got scared of his own creation and had to keep using the narrator to knock him down a peg.
So was C.S. Lewis really this lone voice in the wilderness, single-handedly bringing back some lost truth like he claimed? Well, as it usually goes, the truth is a little bit more complicated than that. If you actually look at the timeline, it's pretty clear Lewis wasn't the first one to push back against the whole heroic Satan thing. I mean, decades earlier, you had critics like Stopford Brooke and A.W. Verity already talking about Satan's degradation and egotism. So by framing himself as this guy recovering a true critical tradition after 100 years, you could definitely argue Lewis was, well, oversimplifying things a bit to make his own arguments sound way more revolutionary than it really was.
But to be fair to Lewis, his defenders made some really crucial points. They argued that his strong Christian faith wasn't a bias, it was actually an advantage. It let him see the poem from a perspective that was much closer to Milton's own 17th century worldview. They also turned the tables, saying, hey, maybe the critics of Lewis are the ones imposing their modern secular ideas onto the poem. And maybe the most important point of all, Lewis's argument forced everyone to stop just obsessing over the famous speeches in the first two books and actually read and engage with the entire epic poem. So after all the arguments, all the accusations, all the deep dive analysis, where do we land? Who actually won the great debate over Milton's Satan? The honest truth is there's no clear winner. The debate is still going on today. But what is absolutely undeniable is that C.S. Lewis fundamentally and permanently changed the conversation. After Lewis, you can no longer just admire Satan as a cool romantic hero without also having to deal with his accusation that you might just be admiring a complete and utter absurdity. He forced a much deeper, much more complicated reading of the character. And to really get the power of Lewis's argument, context is everything. Just 2 years after his book came out, the scholar Douglas Bush directly linked Satan's egotistical speeches and grandstanding rhetoric to the spirit of Hitler. All of a sudden, Lewis's warning against admiring a charismatic, self-obsessed evil leader, well, it felt incredibly real and incredibly important. This wasn't just some dusty academic debate anymore. In the end, our fascination with Milton's Satan never really went away, and it forces us to ask a really interesting question. When we find ourselves drawn to a magnificent, charismatic villain, whether it's in a book or anywhere else, what's really going on? Is that just a testament to the power of great art? Or does it maybe reveal something a little deeper, maybe a little more unsettling about our own nature? The debate for sure continues.